Hello students, this is Prakash Biradar, uh, working in Department of Pharmacology as an assistant professor in the KLE College of Pharmacy, Belgavi, Karnataka. Okay, today we learn about the diuretics, that is the pharmacology of the diuretics drugs. Okay, so that diuretics are nothing but coming to the definitions. So these are the drugs which will excrete mainly of the sodium and also the chloride and bicarbonate. Along with that, obligatory the water is also excreted. Okay, such drugs which will enhances the natriuresis excretion of natriuresis or chloride or bicarbonate and water, they are called to be an diuretics. So before starting this chapter, the main objectives. So after during this course of the topic learning, student will able to know the different classes of the diuretic drugs. And second one, that is student will able to know the mechanism of actions of diuretics. Students will also know the adverse effect and also contraindications of diuretics. After this, the student will also know the clinical usage of the diuretics. So these are the main objectives of the diuretic chapter. Now coming to the definitions, as I said previously, so these are acting over the kidneys, especially in the nephrons. So they will enhances the excretions of the sodium, chloride and bicarbonate, and along with that obligatory water is also excreted. So definition is that these are the drugs which will promote the excretion of sodium, chloride and bicarbonate. Along with that, water is also excreted. The net result being increase in the urine flow, change in the urine pH, change in the ionic compositions of the urine and also blood plasma. So by doing so, it will maintain the isoosmotic pressure and the ionic compositions of the blood, and whatever the excess will be there, like in the certain pathological conditions where the sodium and chlorides will be retained in our body, that can be excreted. So we'll study about that, what are the clinical usage. So coming to their classifications, classification of diuretics based on their efficacy of the drugs. That is, the based on their potency of the drug actions of these kind of the drugs. So the first one is the high ceiling diuretics. High ceiling means their efficacy is very potent. So up to the 10 liters of the urines can be excreted by these drugs, or most of the sodium and chloride can be excreted by these drugs. So they are considered to be high ceiling. So in the bracket I have given that there is also certain mechanism which will play an important, that is they will the uh, inhibit the sodium, potassium and two molecules of chloride co-transporter, that is the symporter system, which will be acting at the site 2 in the thick ascending loop of Henle's. So because of that, they will excrete up to the 10 liters of the excretion of the water, and along with the mainly of the natriuresis, sodium, potassium and chloride ions. Okay, so that is inhibitions of the sodium, potassium, two molecules of chloride, symporter, co-transmitter can be inhibited. Now coming to the second drug, that is the medium efficacy, means where there will be almost of 10% to 15% in the out of the 100% of the urine, 10 to 15% they will cause us an excretion of the sodium and chloride co-transporters. So in this class, the first, the high ceiling diuretics, the examples are furosemide and torsemide and other drugs are also there. Whereas in the medium efficacious drugs, the drugs like the where the mechanism of action is inhibiting the sodium and chloride co-transporter at the site third, that is in the distal convoluted tubules. Okay, so in this class, drugs like the thiazides class of the drugs can be used. So mainly of hydrochlorothiazides or hydrofluomthiazides and chlorthalidones. So these are the classes of the thiazide drugs. Now coming to the another classification, depending upon the efficacious effect, weak or adjuvant diuretics. So they are very weak diuretics, they will be considered. So if there is a slight edema will be there, such kind of the drug will be given. Especially the drugs like the carbonic anhydrase inhibitor like astazolamide. So these are the weak and adjuvant, means there will be combinations can also be used along with the thiazides or sometimes with the other drugs. So in this class, astazolamide is the drug of choice. And the fourth, that is not only the based on the efficacious, sometimes what happens, most of the diuretics, their main adverse effect they are causing is the loss of potassium ions along with the sodium ion will takes place. So to overcome this one, the potassium sparing diuretics, that is the aldosterone antagonistic drug they are called to be. So drugs like spironolactone. So these are the drugs which will inhibit the excretion of the potassium, but they will not accept only the sodium will be excreted. So along with that, there are other drugs are there. Specifically, they will act over the inhibitor of the renal epithelial sodium channels. Drugs like this in this class, triamterene and amilorides are the drug of choice, and these are based on their efficacious effect. Now coming to the another classifications, that is based on the site of actions. So this is very important. So there are mainly of four sites are there through which most of the diuretics will be acting. So first site, that is called to be an proximal convoluted tubules. At the site proximal convoluted tubules where the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, so the class of the drugs will be used. So example for this one is the astazolamide. So PCT carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. So in this class what happens, there will be exchange of the sodium with the hydrogen ion, that is the secretion of the hydrogen ion which is exchanged with the sodium ions, cation with the anion. So that is antipotar system of the exchange will be taking place. So that is carbonic acid will be formed by the water and carbon dioxide which will be dissociated reversibly to form an hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. So this so formed hydrogen ion secretes and it will exchange with the sodium. So that can be inhibited by carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. Second, that is the thiazides, that is acting at the site number 2. Loop diuretics, they are said to be an loop diuretics or the high ceiling diuretics. So thiazides, loop diuretics which will be acting over the thick ascending loop of Henle. So in this class, furosemide, torsemide are the drug of choice. And the third site, that is at the distal convoluted tubule site, that is the third site, thiazides are the drugs. The another that is the fourth site, that is the collecting tubule site number 4, where they will be exchanging the sodium ion with the potassium and as well as the secreted hydrogen ions. So in this in this site, the potassium sparing diuretics actions like the spironolactone, aldosterone antagonistic like spironolactones are very efficacious. And fifth one, based on the site, means these are the osmotic diuretics. Mainly they will be acting mainly on the PCT and along with the descending loop of Henle's. So they will create a more osmotic pressures like the mannitol polysaccharide it is. So they will causes an the excretion of water and sodium ions because of the increase in isoosmotic pressure in the filtrate. Okay. So these are the sites where there will be actions will be taking place. So the first site, that is the where the carbonic anhydrase will be acting here. So they will inhibit the sodium, potassium, that is the sodium with the hydrogen ions. And one more site is there, that is here, that is the symporter system of sodium, potassium, glucose, amino acid, phosphate. So they are moving in the same directions, ions, and along with the amino acids and glucose, they are moving in the same directions. Two or more ions moving in the same directions, they are said to be an symporter system. So these are also inhibited by the some of the furosemide, and they will be also acting over the site number 2, where there will be symporter systems of sodium, potassium, and 2 molecules of chlorides that can be inhibited. So in this way, another site is that distal convoluted tubule site, that is where the symporter of the sodium and chloride at the site number 3 is inhibited by the thiazides. And site number 4 in the collecting tubules, where the excretion of the sodium with the potassium will be taking place. So that can be inhibited by spironolactone, that is the aldosterone antagonistic drugs. So in this way, along with the sodium, potassium is also excreted. To overcome that hypokalemia, so these drugs can be useful. Okay. So in this way, that is the site number 4, sodium with the potassium excretions can be inhibited. So these are the different sites of the actions of the drugs. Now coming to the clinical usage of these drugs, the main clinical usage of these diuretics are mainly for the edema. So in certain pathological conditions of the certain diseases like the CHF, or during the pregnancy where there will be retention of the volume of the fluid will be more there, and also certain nutritional changes. So during like the like if intake of the salt and other nutrients which are composed of the more of the sodium and chloride component, which will retains, causes an edema. So in such conditions, if there is more retention of the sodium and water will be there, then it will form an edema. So it may lead even into the hypertrophy like the CHF, that is congestive heart failure also. So in that case also, due to the increase in volume fluid, due to the failure in the contractility of the heart, so edema formation will take place. So in such cases also, these diuretics can be useful. And nephrotic syndrome, certain nephrotic syndromes, they can also be useful, like acute renal failure and other things. And especially they can be useful in the diabetes insipidus, where there will be more excretions, especially the antidiuretics, they will be used. And more on that, the hypertensions, they can be useful for the hypertensions, where they will reduce the blood plasma volume, and by doing so they will reduce the load over the heart. So in this way, the hypertensions, cardiac output can also be reduced, and high blood pressure can also be reduced. And in certain cases like the cirrhosis of the liver, so in that case also there will be accumulation of the fluid will be there. Sometimes in the ascites, where the abdominal accumulation of the fluid will be taking place. So in that case also we can reduce by the usage of the diuretic. Up to 10 liters of the body fluid can be excreted, especially like the high ceiling diuretic like furosemide and torsemides. And even they can be used for the certain mannitol and glycerol, they can be used for intracranial reduction in the pressure, CSF pressures. So during the trauma and other things, CSF pressure will be increased. To reduce that one, the mannitol and the glycerol can be used to reduce the intracranial pressures. So before going to that, we have to know about what is the physiology of urine fluorescence. So we are knowing that in humans there are two kidneys are there, which are located in the posterior part of the abdominals. So that is right and left. So in a kidney, almost of 1.3 millions of the nephron will be there. The basic unit of the kidney is the nephron. So that is one of the filtration unit it is. So here during the urine formation, there are three processes will take place. That is the glomerular filtrations and tubular reabsorptions. Whatever the filtrate will be there, most of them will be reabsorbed, and tubular secretions. So these are the three processes which will be taking place. So during the glomerular filtration in a day, almost of 180 liters of the glomerular filtration will take place. But in that, most of the 99% it will be reabsorbed. Tubular reabsorption will take place. So almost of 1% of the 180 liter, that is 1.8 to 2 liters of the urine will be formed in a day. So that is what mm, the physiology. So the proximal tubules, they will during the glomerular filtrations, the cells in the nephrons, whatever the blood plasma flowing from the afferent blood vessels, and they will be filtered due to the change in the osmotic and hydrostatic pressures of the blood, as well as from the glomerulars hydrostatic pressure. There will be 10 difference, mmHg difference will be there. So because of that, that will helps in the glomerular filtrations. So this glomerular filtration rate is also depending upon the certain neurological and the hormonal will be regulated. And after that, because their epithelial cells in the glomerulus, they consist of the fenestrations, that is the small pore like structure will be there. From there, most of the ions can be excreted, except the high molecular weight deltas like the protein and amino acids. Most of the peptides, they can be inhibited, and along with the cells, blood formed cells can be inhibited from the filtrations. So after the filtrations, glomerular filtrations, the filtrate will move to the first part of the nephron, that is the proximal convoluted tubules. So out of the 100% of the filtrate, 60 to 70% of the reabsorptions of the sodium will take place in the proximal convoluted tubules. So as I said in the first, that is high ceiling, that is the carbonic anhydrase, where they are involved in the reabsorptions. Along with that, the hydrogen ion which is secreted, that can also be exchange will take place. So this isotonic permeability of this along with the sodium obligatory of the water is also reabsorption will take place. Then the fluid will move to the loop of Henle's. In the descending loop of Henle's, because of the high osmotic or hyperosmotic fluid, so most of the water is also reabsorbed because of the thin membrane of the loop of Henle. So most of the water is also reabsorbed, or through the paracellular manners, the water reabsorption will take place. And as the fluid moves into the upside, into the thick descending loop of Henle's, where there will be thickness of the loop will be increased, so there will be impermeable of water will take place. Only the ion reabsorption will take place, mainly of the sodium, potassium, and 2 molecules of chloride, which are moving in symporter systems, that can be taking place in the site number 2, that is the thick ascending loop of Henle. So after that, it will be reaching into the distal tubules, where the reabsorption of sodium and chloride through the symporter system it will take place. And lastly in the collecting tubules, where the selective water permeability along with the sodium with the hydrogen ion secreted, and along with the potassium is also excreted. So these are these different filtration will take place, and after that their reabsorption will take place. And coming to the secretions, most of the drugs which will be there, like the penicillin and some other drugs which will be secreted, they cannot be filtered through the fenestrated pores, so they will be directly secreted in the proximal convoluted tubules. And also in the last part of the collecting tubules where the hydrogen ion secretion will be taking place. So in this way, these are the how the filtrations of the blood plasma will take place in the glomerular filtrations, and after that it is moving into the proximal convoluted tubules. So here there will be reabsorptions of amino acids, glucose and sodium and potassium. Along with that, obligatory with the water is also reabsorbed into the peritubular capillaries. It will take place. So after that, when it is moving into the descending loop of Henle, most of the leaky with the water channels. So there will be diffusion through the paracellular. There, that is between the gap junction of the cells. There will be paracellular movement of the water will take place. And when it will come to the ascending loop of Henle's and descending loop of Henle, again the symphoto system of the sodium and the chloride and the potassium is taking place. Through that there will be reabsorption will be taking place. So before reaching to the collecting tubules, the body will assess the hydrations of the or isoosmotic pressures. So if there is any variations, the water will be reabsorbed. Most of the water will be reabsorbed by the release of the antidiuretic hormone from the posterior pituitary because of the osmotic receptors which are present in the hypothalamus. So in this way, water balancing or hydrations can be maintained. So these are the sites and the mechanism of actions of diuretics. So osmotic diuretics, they will be acting on proximal tubules, loop of Henle and collecting tubules. So their main function is mechanism is there will be inhibitions of water and sodium reabsorptions. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, they will be acting on proximal tubules. So they will inhibit the bicarbonate reabsorption. So bicarbonate along with the sodium, there will be reabsorption will be taking place. So that can be inhibited. So loop diuretics, that is inhibiting sodium, potassium and two molecules of chloride at the thick ascending loop of Henle. Thiazide's early distal tubule at site 3 where the sodium and chloride co-transporter can be inhibited. Lastly, the potassium sparing diuretics where in the late distal tubules or in the collecting tubules, they will inhibit the sodium reabsorptions along with the potassium secretions. So that can be inhibited. So this is how it will looks like the site 1 where the sodium and potassium sodium bicarbonate formation will take place because of the absorption of the sodium. So the carbonic acid which will dissociate to form an sodium hydrogen and the bicarbonate. So the bicarbonate will combine with sodium to which will be reabsorbed into the blood plasma which will maintain the buffer pH. Site number 1 and site number 3 that is site number 2 that is the thick ascending loop of Henle and site number 3 that is the distal convoluted tubules where the sodium and chloride exchange through the symphoto system, and site number uh, fifth, fourth that is in the collecting tubules where the potassium and hydrogen excretions will be taking place along with the sodium that can be inhibited by the spironolactones. Now coming to the one by one drugs, that is the carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. Example in this one is astazolamide. So the mechanism of action is, so they will be acting mainly on the proximal convoluted tubules. So as we are knowing that the carbonic anhydrase which will catalyze the carbon dioxide in the body and the water to form an carbonic acid in presence of carbonic anhydrase enzyme. The so formed carbonic acid which will dissociate reversibly to form an hydrogen ion and also bicarbonate ions. So this hydrogen ion it will exchange with the sodium ions, and the so formed sodium from the basolateral membrane it will combine with the bicarbonate into the peritubular, it will be reabsorbed. So in this way the sodium which will be exchanging with the hydrogen and later it will combine to the form and sodium bicarbonate which is maintaining the blood pH also. So this is how it will be acting. This the carbonic acid which will be formed from the carbon dioxide and water in presence of Ca to form an carbonic acid. So this will dissociate, the H plus ion formation will take place. So this is through the antiporter systems. They will exchange with one ion with the another. So sodium will exchange with the hydrogens. So the so formed sodium, they will combine with the bicarbonate, and they will through the energy dependent transporter, that is through the ATPase in the basolateral membrane, they will be exchanged with the potassium will takes place and the sodium will be exchanged. They will combine to form an sodium bicarbonate, which will be used reabsorbed into the peritubular to maintain the blood pH up to the 7.3 to the 7.5. Okay. So this is the mechanism of actions. Now coming to the adverse effect and the contraindications. So the main adverse effect, it will produces the carbonic anhydride is metabolic acidosis because of the more absorptions or antiporter of these hydrogen ions. It will forms an the acidosis, metabolic acidosis it will produces, and renal stone with the phosphate and calcium, like the calcium oxalate or calcium phosphate, which will form in that medium. Renal potassium wasting will take place, that is due to the excretion along with the sodium, that will the patient will suffer from the hypokalemia. Diuresis itself limiting up to the 2 to 3 days also. So these are the some of the adverse effect. Along with that, some certain others are there like drowsiness, paresthesia, that is the anesthesia, loss of the sensation will be there. Drowsiness, that is sleepiness will be there. Disorientations, there will be concentrations, diversion will be taking place. Disorientations, renal stone formations due to the case of alkalizations will be taking place, mainly of the phosphate and calcium. Now coming to the contraindications, they cannot be used in the liver cirrhosis patients because most of the carbonic anhydride, it will inhibit the ammonia to form an ammonium ion. So because of that, what happens, the body in the increase in the ammonia level, it will causes encephalopathy also. So especially in the liver cirrhosis patient, that can be inhibited. Nitrogenous waste of the ammonia can be to form an intoxic of the ammonium can be inhibited by the carbonic anhydrase enzyme. So because of that, it cannot be used in the cirrhosis patient also. So coming to the clinical usage of the carbonic anhydrase enzymes inhibitor like astazolamide, we may be knowing that most of the cases they can be used for the glaucoma to reduce the intraocular pressure, that is IOT, so which will causing and damaging to the nerve. So that can be optic nerve defective can be minimized by reducing the IOT, intraocular tensions, by the humerus it will be secreting which will composed of sodium bicarbonate. So that can be decreased in the glaucoma patients by the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors like the stazolamide or dorzolamide and brinzolamide. So these are the drugs which can be used, and also they can be used for the overcome the mountain sickness in the high altitude. So this is mainly of the bicarbonates, uh, increase in that in the choroid plexus or acidosis of the CSF result in the hyperventilations because of the increase in these concentration. So in the higher altitudes where there will be oxygen is also less and hyperventilation it will cause us. So that is called as the mountain sickness. Sorry, not motion. Now coming to the another that is clinical usage is that it can be used for the urinary alkalizations to prevent the uric acid and the cystine stone formation, and it can be used for the diuretic effect in the certain pathological conditions where the accumulation of the fluid will be there in the edema, and also they can be used for the metabolic alcolysis. Now coming to this second class of the drug, that is the low ceiling diuretics. Thiazides are the drugs where they will be acting at the site number 3 at the distal convoluted tubules, where it will be exchanging of the symporter. Symporter means two or more ions going in same direction. Symporter of sodium and chloride ions can be inhibited. by these thiazides. They are considered to be low ceiling. Almost of 10 to 15% excretion will be takes place of natriuresis by using of these drugs. So in this class, chlorothiazides, mm, bendroflumethazides, chlorthalidones, metolazones, indapamide. So these are the drugs which are uh, considered in thiazide diuretics. So they are similar to the sulfonamide structures. So their plasma T-off is of the 6 to 12 hours. Now coming to the mechanism of actions, thiazides are secreted by the proximal tubules but works in DCT, and they will inhibit the sodium and chloride importers, and thus they will also inhibit, they are also having the weak carbonic anhydrase inhibitor effect also. So this is how they will be inhibiting the sodium and chloride importers. Later the sodium will be exchanging with the potassium. So in this way, very low ceiling diuretics, almost of 10% will be excreted. So effect of electrolyte, because of the variation in this one, it will causes an due to the increase in sodium excretion and chloride excretions, along with that potassium is also excreted. So it will leading into the hypokalemic and metabolic alcoholysis in the distal convoluted tubules, and also it will inhibit uric acid secretions, and hyperuricemia it will cause us. So it will inhibit the uric acid secretions, and also it will be retained into the body. So it will leading into the gout. So it will accumulate over the joints to form an gout, and it will decreases the calcium excretions, tend to increase the plasma calcium level, retard the osteoporosis processes also, and increase in magnesium excretions. So these are the variation in the electrolyte it will takes place. So coming to their adverse effect, the main adverse effect they are producing is hypokalemia, means reduce in the potassium concentration in the body, and increased risk of distalis toxicity also. If you are using along with the distalis adverse effect and also contraindication, so distalis toxicity can be increased. Hyponatremia, hypomagnesemia, or hyperuricemia. So these are the cautions in the gout and rheumatoid arthritis patients also. They are contraindicated in such kind of this patient. They even causes the hyperglycemia and hypercholesterol anemia will take place. So they are not favored in the diabetes mellitus and also dyslipidemic, where there will be uh, hyperlipidemic patients can be contraindicated because of the increase in the glucose level and also hypercholesteremia. So indapamide has a less effect on the lipid and uric acid, so they can choose instead of the other thiazides, they can be useful of indapamide will be there. Hypercalcemia, good for the elderly patients, especially in the menopausal women, they are very uh, efficacious effect also, and it will causes of sexual dysfunctions and libido and erectile dysfunction also. So these are the some of the adverse effect. Now coming to the drug interactions, it will interact with the certain arrhythmic drugs or like the distalis, quinidine. So it will increases the toxicity of the distalis, and also it will quinidine action will also be increased in the antiarrhythmic. They will reduces the efficacy of the anticoagulant drugs and urosoric drugs also. They will reduces the efficacy of the oral anti-diabetic like the glibenclamide and metformin. So that efficacy is also reduced. They will reduce the efficacy of the NSAIDs and reduce the efficacy of the, even the thiazides by the usage with the combination with the NSAID, AID with the thiazides. So indications for the thiazides, so they can be used for the uh, hypertensions as a single drug or in combinations, and they can be used in chronic mild heart failure and also they can be used in the edema patients. They can be used for the nephrogenic diabetic insipidus. They can be used for prevention of calcium excretion, especially in the osteoporosis. So in such cases, they can be useful also. Coming to the another drug, that is the one of the mostly widely used, that is the loop diuretics or high ceiling diuretics. They are called as. So in this class, furosemide, torsemide, bumetanide. So these are the some of the sulfonamide derivative drugs are there. So they will be acting at site number 2 at the thick ascending loop of Henle's. So their main mechanism should be inhibiting the sodium, potassium and two molecules of the chloride. So they were inhibiting this co-transporter, that is this importer of this component, and they will increases the excretion of uh, sodium, potassium and also chloride. And osmotic gradient for water reabsorption is also increase in water excretion due to the obligatory of these ions, the water is also excreted. Calcium and magnesium excretion is also takes place. So this is how it will be acting in the site number 2 thick ascending loop of Henle, where there will be sodium, potassium and chloride symporter systems, two or more ions moving in the same directions. Later sodium is exchanging with the potassium. So in this way, and along with that certain other ions like magnesium and other ions can also excrete it. So in this way they will increase the natriuresis and water excretion. Along with that potassium excretion is also takes place, which will cause us an hypocalmia also. Interactions, they will interact with some of the aminoglycosides and even in the anti-cancerous drugs like cisplatin. So there may be a risk of nephrotoxicity and ototoxicity will be there. So it will produce a synergistic like actions with the aminoglycosides and cisplatin. So nephrotoxicity and ototoxicity. Prostaglandins are maintained, and NSAIDs, they will reduce the diuretic effect also. Probenecid, they will reduce the effect of diuretics by the inhibiting the secretion into the lumen. So in this way, these are some of the drug interaction it will produce. So coming to their clinical usage, they are the first drug of choice for the CHF patients, and they can be used for the acute pulmonary edema patients, and edema due to the renal failure or nephrotic syndrome, or in the ascites where there will be accumulation of the fluid in the abdominal will be there, and they can be used for the severe hypertension also, and they can be used for the forced diuresis, especially in the chemical intoxications, so that the excretion of the intoxic component will takes place. So these are some of the clinical indication. Now coming to the adverse effect, they can be used for hypovolemic metabolic alkalosis. They can, sorry, they are producing the hypovolemic metabolic alkalosis, ototoxicity, typical sulfonamide allergy like reactions they will be producing. Now coming to the last component, last but one, that is the potassium sparing diuretics. So potassium sparing diuretics are nothing but which will spare the potassium from the along with the sodium it will be excreting. So in this way the hypokalemia can be overcome. So some of the drugs like the sodium specific sodium channel inhibitors like the amiloride, triamterene, and aldosterone antagonistic like spironolactone or eplerenone are the drug of which can antagonize the spironolactone actions. So aldosterone induced expression of the sodium potassium ATPase pump and also sodium channel that can be uh, inhibited, and only the sodium excretions can be made. They will block the aldosterone receptor and reduces the sodium reabsorptions and potassium secretions. So in this way the level of the potassium will be maintained. So this is how it will be acting in the principal cells of the lumen of the in the collecting tubules, where the sodium and potassium exchange will be taking place, that can be inhibited. So this is the aldosterone antagonist receptor. So this spironolactone block this one. The sodium exchanging for the potassium can be blocked. So that is how they will be acting as a potassium sparing diuretics. So these diuretics are weak diuretic in nature, and usually they can be used in the combinations for the diuretic and also for the antihypertensive and to overcome from the hypokalemia also. Spironolactone is metabolized to its active metabolite carnitine, and long-term use of the spironolactone can prevent the myocardial hypertrophy and myocardial fibrosis. Adverse effect of this spironolactone, hyperkalemia it will cause us, and anti-androgenic effect like gynecomastia, enlargement of the breast in the male will take place, decrease in the libido and impotency, and menstrual cycle disturbances also takes place. And other adverse effect like megaloblastic anemia, especially the trimiptylin, which is folate antagonistic. So because of that, the megaloblastic anemia it will be causing. So coming to their clinical indications, they can be used for the antihypertensive actions along with the combination with the other antihypertensives. They can be used to increase the effect and prevent the hypokalemia. They can be used for the aldosteronisms that occur in the cirrhosis. Contraindication and precautions for the patient prone for the hyperkalemia, which may cause us renal failure or which should never be combined with the ECA inhibitors and NSAIDs. Sometimes the potassium supplement is also made. So last drug of the diuretics, that is the osmotic diuretics. So in this class the prototype is mannitol. So other rarely used are the glycerin, isosorbate and urea. So they are depending upon their physical properties, means they will increase the osmotic pressure, osmosis. So they will, because of that, they freely filter through the glomerulus, and negligible tubular reabsorptions, and chemically they are inert and pharmacologically they are inert. So they are not easily metabolized. So because of the increasing the osmotic pressure, so because they will excrete more of the water and sodium ion takes place. Coming to the pharmacokinetic aspect, so they can be given intravenous, glycerin and isosorbate can be given orally. So glycerin is 80% metabolized, mannitol is 20% metabolized, isosorbate and urea they are not metabolized, but they can be excreted to the renal. So mechanism of actions, the osmotic diuretics is filtered and increase the osmotic pressure in the tubular lumens and increase in the excretion of water because of the high osmotic pressures, and electrolytes like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium and even bicarbonate and phosphate. And it will increase the volume of urine and also rate of urine flow also. Mannitol can also reduce the brain volume, that is the intracranial pressure can also be decreased by the using of glycerin. Similar effect to the eyes also, glaucoma. So it will reduce the intraocular pressure also. So it will reduce the brain edema, brain volume and pressure. Mannitol and urea are the given before and after the surgery, brain surgery. So this is, they can be used for disequilibrium syndrome for the hemodialysis, and solute overload in the hemolysis and rhabdomyolysis they can be useful. Rhabdomyolysis is muscle pain. So in that cases also they can be used. So they can be used for the prophylaxis of acute tubular necrosis when they are using the contrast media for the diagnosis and even in the surgery and trauma. Okay. Adverse effect, they will remove of more of water from the interstitial compartment, and increase of the blood volume, potentially dangerous in the heart failures, especially in the pulmonary edema, hyponatremia. It will produces headache, nausea, vomiting, water excretion, hypovolemic, hypernatremia, hypersensitivity reactions. Even it will produces vein thrombosis. These are some of the adverse effects it will be producing: hyperglycemia or glycosuria. So this is about the diuretics. The take-home message is that you are knowing the physiology of the urine formations, you are knowing the different classes of the diuretics and their actions, mechanism of actions at the different sites, and you are knowing the adverse effect and contraindications of the drugs. Along with that, you are knowing the clinical uses of the diuretics. So this is about the diuretics, pharmacology of the diuretics drugs, and so this completes the diuretics component. Thank you.